Sometimes spending a little bit more on your decals can be worth it, and how important your choice of decals when making custom models is what we want to, delve into a little bit more here in today's review. So let's check it out right after the drop. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an ATR42-500 of Danish Air Transport. As we can see here at the front of the box, TWC Customs, who has made this custom for me, has also modified the box, so we have a lovely image of the aircraft model and the DAT branding on top of the box. The backside of the box has also been nicely modified, again with the image. He has then, of course, utilized the parts of the box that still work from the original box design from Herpa Wings, of course. This donor model is, of course, originally a Herpa Wings model. But yeah, overall, I really like when custom model makers put in not just the effort with the model, but also modify the box. It just adds a little bit extra to the whole experience. And here she is, the ATR42-500 of Danish Air Transport, a model that we just don't see in Scale 500. So custom models is the only way to go for this, even though it is a European airline, so something Herpa normally should be doing. But they haven't done any 42s in ages. In fact, they have never refurbished the ATR42 mold, unlike the 72 one. So since this is a model that Herpa will definitely never make, I went the custom model way. I got myself the decals and gave them then to TWC Customs and asked him, could you please apply this to a model for me? He was so very kind to say yes. But why that maybe wasn't the best idea overall, we will see throughout this review. But let's just start off with the model itself. Taking a look here at the tail section with the DAT or Danish Air Transport logo or branding on the vertical stabilizer. Of course, with the ATR, we have the horizontal stabilizer placed on top, and here we also have a bit of nice detailing overall. Now on the fuselage, we then have the full registration code of the aircraft, and you might notice, well, Danish Air Transport, why doesn't it have an Oscar Yankee registration? This is because Danish Air Transport has a few subsidiaries, among this, which is the Lithuanian airline DAT-LT, which this aircraft technically belongs to, but they are operating just within the normal DAT operations. Then we of course also have the DAT web address and some markings around the cabin windows, quite nice. And then towards the very tail, we also have the strobe light. Now at the front of the aircraft, we do find actually quite a good amount of detailing considering the size of the aircraft. We have some static ports just underneath the cabin windows. We of course also have the main cargo hatch, as the ATR has its cargo compartment at the front of the cabin between the cockpit and the passenger cabin. Behind that we have an emergency exit, and of course again some safety markings around the windows. So not the worst amount of detailing, although many of the decals here seem a bit blurry, so not too sharp in the print, but I will get into that more later. Underneath the wing we also find the Danish Air Transport branding. The cockpit section itself then comprises of the cockpit windows. Here I would have really wished for some window wipers. Unfortunately, these decals that I found did not have that. But we have the really lovely colored in red nose. This is hand painted, by the way, from TWC Customs, so quite lovely work here. Now, if we move from the cockpit section itself to the turboprop engines of this little ATR, we can see, yes, there isn't really that much of detailing in terms of, well, decals or prints or whatever we want to call it. They're just white. But I do want you to notice one thing, and that is the yellow tips on the blades, because that is actually something the donor model did not have, the donor model being a Euro lot from Herpa Wings. So this is again something that TWC has hand painted himself, and I think this is a lovely little bit of detail to the aircraft. Something he has also modified is actually the landing gear. Now this is the standard landing gear that Herpa used on all their old generation ATR aircraft models, but notice that it actually looks like their wheels and it's not just black, and that's because, yeah, TWC has actually added a little white dot, giving the effect of a wheel cap. So really, really cool stuff here. Now, when we also take a quick look at the wings, we will see, yes, it's maybe not the most detailed part of the aircraft, but these ATRs have never been super detailed here. But what we can notice, at least on the underside of the wing, is the registration code. And you might think now, okay, I messed up the focus in this image, but no, this is how blurry the decal really is. So there we have it, the ATR42 in the standard livery of Danish Air Transport, if you can call it a standard livery. They have so many variants of it. But from Herpa Wings as the donor model, but then of course modified into a DAT by TWC Customs, all in scale 500. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Now, being a Dane and living in Denmark, I see this airline quite often, so I'm really happy to have this now in my collection, especially because this is a model that, as I said, Herpa would never make, as they never refurbished the mold for the ATR42, so having it as a custom model was the only option for me. So now I have it, I'm happy. Although, of course, it could be better. But it's really not down to the work of TWC Customs. I have to stress that out. I'm really happy with his work. He has placed the decals really nicely. And as you can see, he has really put in a lot of effort to elevate the model as much as possible. Hand painting the nose, hand painting the yellow tips on the blades, giving the landing gear wheel caps, and all these things really do so much to this tiny little aircraft. Now, in terms of the decals, I bought them myself and gave them to him and asked him, could you please place this on the model for me? And he was so very kind to do so. But to be honest, today he would probably not do so anymore, because he has also made more experience with various decals, and these ones are just not quite good enough. The decal paper itself, I think, is fine. It is just the print quality that is just not nearly as sharp as from other decal makers. And this is not to name or shame anyone here. There are just differences in print quality, and this is just not the best out there. Now, it should also be said, because this tiny little aircraft is so tiny, I have to get super close with my camera to film these details. And the closer I get, the more I am exposing any imperfections in the print. And I realize that I might now sound a little like the Herpa Wings product manager, but with just a little bit of distance. Or basically just the normal distance you would look at the model at. The blurriness of these decals is much less noticeable. It is really emphasized by my filming. That has to be noted. But still, there are better products, there are better decals out there. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is really, don't be too cheap with your decals, and do really look out for the print quality, because the end result on your aircraft model, well, it will really reward you for it, basically. Ultimately, I'm still quite happy with this little ATR in front of me. It will work really nice in a future setup for me, and I'm just happy to have a little ATR of DAT. But what about you? Maybe you have experience with different kinds of decals coming from various sources. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Maybe you did like me, got a decal, asked a council to make a custom model, or you did it yourself. Tell your story down below. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. So if you have enjoyed this type of content, then feel free to leave a like or hit subscribe. With that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.